All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lasting Learning Podcast. I am super, super excited about this week. This is an episode that I've been trying to capture for a couple of weeks now because the conversation that we're going to have today is it's kind of revolutionary. It's kind of mind-blowing. Most of the people that listen to this podcast are educators or parents, and they are really focused on the education of their children. And, as we talk through every episode of this podcast, we're really focused on the skills that matter, making sure that learning sticks. We're not just teaching to a test where kids are going to easily forget the content that we teach our students. And today's guest is an extraordinary man. I had the opportunity to meet him a couple of weeks ago, face to face. I'll just give you a quick preview of him, and then I'll turn over to him to introduce himself. But his name is Mike Lipa, and Mike works at Snapchat, where I am housed up. I live up in Grand Blanc, Michigan. If you did the hand thing for Michigan, I'm right up in the middle. Snapchat is located down in downtown Detroit, and it's there as a part of this revitalization effort in downtown Detroit, where big things are happening. And Mike is a testament to some of those big things happening. So I'm just going to turn over to you, Mike, real quick. If you just want to introduce yourself, and then we're going to jump right in because your story is a powerful, powerful story. So tell us, who are you and what are you about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that and the warm introduction. I hope I can live up to some of the things that you said.
The bar has been raised. Good luck now.
Yeah, so Mike Lipa, I'm the Senior Account Executive at Snapchat in the automotive vertical. So what does that mean? Essentially, that means that I'm a media or a digital media or social media sales professional. Ultimately, I guess the best way to describe that in layman's terms would be I am a consultant to the big three automotive, particularly GM, Porsche, Subaru, and Mercedes. I have a counterpart that covers Ford and Chrysler. But nonetheless, we consult on best practices on how to leverage Snapchat to ultimately drive branding and or lower funnel vehicle sales for those big three autos. And that there's a whole plethora of things that come along with that, like how to speak to a millennial or Gen Z audience in an ever-changing environment where they're introducing electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles and a lot of changes happening there. So, what is it that this new generation wants from a product standpoint? How do we speak to them? What do we say? What's going to resonate, et cetera?
You got one of those fancy titles, and I often joke, my title, Executive Director, Curriculum and Instruction. It's one of those, it's pretty cool on a business card, but it doesn't necessarily say what you do. So I appreciate the fact that you kind of explained what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis. And in layman's terms, you try to get automakers to advertise using Snapchat, in essence.
Right. But at the same time, as much as I'm measured on a sales as a performance standard at Snapchat, I'm measured by my clients from how I can help them drive results, right? So It's all going to be based on ROI.
Yeah, so good. And so there's going to be lots of connections that I'm making just over the last couple of weeks as I've really focused on our initial conversation. For those of you that aren't aware, every year here in our school district, with the Brandon School District, our building level administrators come back together and we do some training. And this year we decided to really take it outside of the box. And we went down and went to Snapchat in Detroit. And we got to have a conversation with Mike and really try to expand our horizons so that we're not just looking at education as this linear thing where we're just preparing kids to play school every day. We're really trying to set them up for life. And we wanted to see, what is life like? And the conversation was powerful. So for those of you that heard the word Snapchat, let me just put this out there. We are not trying to put a sales pitch on for Snapchat. We are not trying to say, hey, educators, you really need to be using Snapchat or not. That is not this conversation at all. I'll stand on that soapbox some other time and tell you about the beauties of Snapchat, but that's not Mike's intent. That's not my intent at all. We're really here to tell the Mike Lipa story, if you will. If this is like a 30 on 30 on ESPN, we want to find out like what makes him tick, because his job, I'll just be real with you, it's pretty cool to work in one of the coolest social media companies there is. Snapchat it's what all the kids use. And he's got the stats to prove, truly, all the kids use it. But if you think about the nature of his job, he's trying to sell ad space to automotive executives, if you will, who aren't necessarily in that kid space. And he's got a hard job of trying to teach a different language to different people. He's truly like a language interpreter, if you will, trying to convince people and sell people, and boils down to the relationships he's able to make and the relationships he has that he can leverage for his job. And in education, that's really what we're all about. As a former teacher and building administrator, my job was to get numbers, but I had to use my relationships with people to try to get those numbers. So, Mike, before we dive too far into that piece of it, though, do you mind sharing a little bit about your story? You and I are about the same age, but your educational journey through K-12 schooling and then beyond, what helped you land in Snapchat?
Yeah, so I've got one of the most interesting, I would say, backgrounds or stories on how I landed at Snapchat, probably from, all of the people that I've met at Snap. Most of them have very kind of star-studded higher educational resumes. Not to say that I don't, but just in terms of what people would consider success and failure from an educational background, they would probably consider mine more of a challenge. But nonetheless, I think I found some success and landed in a similar position as my counterparts. So, so K through 8, public schools in Farmington, great school district for the most part. I spent most of my childhood playing hockey at a very competitive level, and I was pretty decent at it to the point where I was at a tournament out in Boston. I was approached by the Cranbrook Kingswood high school hockey coach, and if I was ever willing to consider private school or college preparatory as an option. Come from a really modest background, so financially that was going to be a challenge, but nonetheless they were going to be willing to kind of aid us along the way. So I jumped in, head first into the Cranbrook Kingswood community, where I was actually provided, all of the tools and instruments you would need, and to be able to take advantage of what I would consider one of the best, college preparatory educations that you could receive. And I did not really take advantage of it in any way, shape, or form. I spent most of my time, like a lot of kids, like worrying about sports, worrying about your social status, and things like that. And really just kind of like, I would consider myself popular, and but ultimately kind of confused about where I was going to go, what the next steps were. I knew I wanted to go to college and things like that, but I don't think it was my primary. I know it wasn't my primary focus, and I was a very, kind of average student, probably like a C student, and I ultimately frustrated a lot of my teachers because they knew the talent was there, and I just wasn't taking advantage of it. And I think in a lot of cases there were courses that I succeeded in, and those were the teachers that they went the extra mile and really tried to befriend me rather than alienate me because I wasn't the model student, right? So anyways, from there, I went to Michigan State, where I studied in finance I was there for about 4.5 years. And during that time, again, just not focused and not taking full advantage of the education that was there, or the curriculum that was there, kind of, again, just a C student. And then while that was taking place, the poker craze hit. And that was about 2002. And I decided that I was going all in and I was going to become a professional poker player, right? My parents were obviously super elated. And I sense my sarcasm here, they were not. That was how I was going to try and make a living for the rest of my life. And there was a lot of people that were doing it successfully, and obviously the grand majority were not. I did that for about 3 years unsuccessfully. So like major failures, right? But major failures, in my opinion, are the way people learn, right? Some of the biggest business leaders on this planet fail every single day and have challenges every single day. And that's where they learn and grow and ultimately adapt. So from there, I went and I left Michigan State. I ended up finishing my BA in economics at Wayne State while I was actually starting my professional career at the same time at a company called CompuWare. For those Michiganders out there, CompuWare is like the largest software company in Michigan. They built their entire model on mainframe and servicing large data clients. like Social Security and the automotive manufacturers that needed to keep a lot of data housed on the mainframe and not on the cloud. We won't go too deep there, but my primary role was inside sales. My territory was Northern California. So I was selling software from Detroit, Michigan, into essentially into Silicon Valley. So think about that. This was obviously a challenge. This was during 2008, during the recession. So I would say this was probably the hardest job I'll ever have.
Yeah.
And learned a great deal about building relationships internally and externally. And about, just fortitude and staying the course. So it was at that time in about 2010 that through some relationships that I'd had in college, I met a guy named David Farbman, who is the principal at one of the largest privately held commercial real estate companies in Southeast Michigan called the Farbman Group. He was starting a digital media company called Outdoor Hub, which is essentially like the ESPN of the outdoors. And digital media was really explosive at the time. So if you think about it, our sports weren't the sports you'd find on ESPN. They were more of these outdoor sports: hunt, fish, shoot, camp, hike, mountain, water, power, farming, etc. And I started there with a resume that was basically bleak, and it was all built on trust, right? He trusted me and saw these kind of skills that you can't find on a resume that you could find by sitting down with somebody and having a conversation, and really took a chance, I would say, on me. And in a lot of ways, I helped him grow his business for about 8 years, to the point where I became running the sales for everything east of the Mississippi, so half of the nation for him. And I left right before they eventually sold that company to a larger firm called Vertical Scope. And then during that time, I was actually sought out by Snapchat in a roundabout way, and then kind of decided to diversify my skill set outside of lifestyle media and into this crazy social data-driven space that we find ourselves in today. And I won't go too deep into Snapchat because it gets very, very granular and technical. But yeah, that in a nutshell is the story.
That's it. I'm just sitting here, and if you can see me, I've got a page just filled with notes, and I've heard this story before. But I'm just sitting here making all these connections to all these things that you're saying that just resonate. One of the buzz phrases out there right now is the idea of failing forward.
Failing forward,
you nail that. You talked about, I guess, let me take a few rabbit trails here. One of the things that resonated with me is you said that you didn't see yourself as that focused. You said, I wasn't that focused as a student. I would look at it a little bit differently. I would say that you were completely focused, but maybe not focused on school.
Yeah, that's right.
You talk about
I just had a different measurement of success.
Yeah.
Is really what happened to me early. Yeah.
For those people that aren't familiar with Cranbrook, it's a private school here in Southeast Michigan, in Oakland County. Oakland County is it's a nice county to live and work in. It
is a affluent county.
Very, very affluent. Yeah. A lot of expectations for kids that come out of Oakland County, and you were chosen to come be at this cream of the crop institution because of your hockey skills, and you had to have some sort of work ethic or some sort of focus and attention to details. Just from that, I think I'll just take a side here, is pump up those electives or special areas or those essential areas of schools that we're constantly slashing and cutting and saying we have to focus on content. We got to focus on reading, math, science, and social studies at the expense of sports and extracurriculars. And I would argue sometimes we have students that learn more, if not more important things in some of those extracurriculars or those essential areas, even sports, that carry them through life. But that's a conversation maybe for another time.
I want to say something real quick, though.
Yeah.
There was a time when I did a lot of internships as I was in college. I did them with Wachovia Securities, with Smith Barney. I'd mentioned I was studying in finance and ultimately in Merrill Lynch. And at one point, I was going through an interview process at Merrill Lynch to become a private wealth manager. And the entire interview process, believe it or not, was all around winning and competition. And the guy that ran the office, basically his entire interview was, I want you to tell me 3 instances in which you've won and you've won big. And so if you think about it, it's a really tough question to answer.
Oh, right.
And it's easy if you're an athlete, right? They hire a lot of athletes that maybe not have done as great from a curriculum standpoint, but people that are super competitive and they're going to stop nothing short of at winning in business, right? Taking those skills that they learn on the field and bringing them into a business standpoint. So unless you've won state championships and, if you played in college and done some of these things, it's a really, really tough question to answer. But nonetheless, they valued those skills, right? At a really, really, really important level.
Yeah, it's so good. And, I'll talk selfishly from my end. In education, my job is to prepare kids for later on in life so they can go out there and be successful, which means I have to give them those opportunities and those skill sets so they can go out there and get those jobs at some of these places that put value on winning or reflection or growth or being willing to take risks and chances. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, is that's what leads to ultimate success. Something I've talked about in the past on past episodes, we won't go into it right now, is the idea that your resume will get you an interview. Your passion will get you the job. Your relationships will get you the promotion. And I think it's important that we focus on all phases of that. It's not just let's create a resume, because you're a prime example. Your resume has been built through your passion and through your relationships as you've gone. You've met people that have said, I want to take a chance on you. And because you have that relationship with them, you don't want to let them down. So you're knocking down walls for them and building skills along the way. You don't just get those skills in your K-12 schooling. But something I want to talk about a little bit, if that's okay. You talk about this relationship you had with David Fogman, and who's this guy that gave you this opportunity, gave you this chance, and then basically gave you the reins to say, grow this for me. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more about how he inspired you and empowered you to go out there and just become you?
Yeah. So David is like, again, he probably has a similar educational background. He spent time at Michigan State, average student at best. But what I was attracted to him so early on, and even the first time I met with him, was just his charisma and his ability to connect with people, just in the way in which he asks the questions and the questions that he asks and how he gets people to open up. And I've seen him do this in the conference or in the boardrooms at the highest level, and get people to open up and build trust-based relationships, unlike anything I've ever seen, to take down those barriers where people have like their predefined notions of your company or of you, and really just, kind of break all the laws that be and break all those barriers. And he's an incredible human being. And it's one of the skill sets that he has, unlike a lot of people I've ever seen. So in a lot of ways, I kind of considered him a mentor on that front, and really just constantly was, trying to meet with him as much as possible on his busy calendar and get as much time I could with him, not just to like show him that I cared, but really just to learn from him. And I think that he appreciated the fact that I was trying to learn from his skill set, and that I recognized it, and that it wasn't, a BS
right.
type of skill set. It was real and it worked, and there was real benefits that came from it. And the guys, and he was ultimately one of the hardest workers I've ever met. I mean, the guy's up at 4:30 in the morning working out every day before he starts his day. So there was a lot of things that I envied about him and still do to this day, and those energy levels, et cetera. So, yeah.
That's good. Yeah. There's two quotes that resonate with me that I've heard recently. It's, and I'm not saying that to discount curriculum and academics. I mean, truly, my job is all about curriculum and academics. So I don't want people to get the impression that I'm discounting it at all. But it's been said before that A students end up working for the C students. And it's not because they don't have academic knowledge. It's because oftentimes those C students, I mean, they're not failures. C students are those ones that also know how to play the social game, if you will. They know how to maneuver life, and their whole attention isn't just to mastering tests and quizzes and just spitting back information that now Alexa and Google and Siri can give you. It's about making those interpersonal connections. And then Elon Musk, one of the richest people in the world right now, one of the biggest innovators in the world. You can see these memes all over the place where he says, I didn't go to Harvard, but the people that work for me did. which I think is so, it's a cool statement. And it helps realign my focus and my challenge, where if I am to be setting kids up for success, I need to make sure that my focus is really on the focus. Use relationships, use skill building, and supplement content and curriculum and all that stuff, but focus on the stuff that matters. When we were chatting at Snapchat, you talked about some of the keys to success. And, you even talked about new people that are coming in, or just new people entering the workforce, and what are some of those keys and those skill sets that are needed. Do you mind elaborating on that just a little bit from your own perspective and your own point of view?
Yeah, so I had this this slide that I prepared for the team, and I have it in front of me now, and I guess I've had this with me for about a decade now.
Yeah.
The 10 things that require zero talent. And it's amazing because some of them will resonate more than others, but being on time and work ethic, effort, body language. A lot of people don't think about body language and how important it is when you're in front of your boss, your direct manager, when you're in front of your clients. Body language can win the business, lose the business, get the promotion, not get the promotion. That a lot of that goes along with your energy levels. What type of energy do you bring into your office space every single day? And energy even leads into attitude. Attitude, I think, is probably the most important, right? We're all going to have to, for the most part, we're all going to have to go to work every single day. So how are you going to go to work? You're going to go to work angry? You're going to go to work happy? What type of attitude are you going to bring? I tell you, people want to work with happy people more than they want to work with angry people or people that are negative. People that are positive, they're the ones that are going to ultimately succeed, in my opinion. So passion, obviously you have to be coachable and willing to learn. Again, all of these have nothing to do with if you got an A, a B, or C, or D. These are just things that you can do. Doing the extra work and being prepared. And in my opinion, school is all about learning how to become prepared. That's what you're doing. You read, you learn, you're quizzed on it. Were you prepared?
Right.
And it's setting you up for what you're going to deal with in the business world. Whether you're a teacher, an administrator, an account executive at Snapchat. I mean, if I go into my clients and I'm trying to help them understand how to, launch a new model on Snapchat and it's going to cost them $1 million and I'm not prepared, they're not going to do it.
Right.
Thursday. So you got to know your stuff.
Yeah. So,
but again, I think attitude at the end of the day is like, and everyone that knows me would say, wow, the guy's like a comedian. He's bringing all this like funny, quirky jokes into the office every single day. And that's not because I don't take what I do seriously. I take what I do very seriously, but we can have fun while we're doing it.
Right. Yeah. It's so good. In schools today, we've become so fixated on chasing the numbers and or chasing the grade. There are states all across America today where schools and districts are given a letter grade for their success, and
chasing the measurement of success.
And they're defining success as kids' proficiencies on singular tests or whatever the case may be. And I get it. We want to make sure that we're prepared. We want to make sure that we're reflective and that we're analytical and progress monitoring. I get all of that. But I think what you just articulated very well is all of those things become the byproducts of doing things the right way. When you do things the right way, that success kind of just takes care of itself. If you're constantly chasing numbers, it's like chasing a rainbow. You'll never quite get there because you haven't formed those relationships. You haven't put in the effort and put in the work to get there. It's something that's also interesting to me. It's almost oxymoronic and seems like a bipolar example, if you will, where you work for this social media company that really the major audience, the major demographic that's utilizing your platform are teenagers and millennials. And
13 to 34 is our sweet spot.
So people like us sit around and will complain about kids these days and how they're just fixated on their phones and all they want to do, they've lost these social skills. But you're here, you work in that industry, you work in that space, and you're here preaching social skills matter.
They do.
How powerful. You're not just sending snaps out to the big three saying, hey, look how cool we are. You're still making connections.
I mean, we still, in a world that most people communicate in business by email, I still think the best way to communicate is in person.
Right.
Sitting down with somebody at their desk, shaking their hand, and having a 30-minute real conversation. Not even just a presentation that's formal and thoughtful, but more of a thoughtful conversation.
Yeah.
You learn about them, you learn about who they are, what their needs are, wants are, and ultimately what their business objectives are, and if you can help them meet them or exceed them.
All right. It's so good. It's a bad example, but we're in an age where people are downloading music through iTunes and Spotify and all this stuff. We're downloading music all the time. Yet where we make that connection with the artist is when we go to their concerts. We still want to see them in person. It's one thing to consume, but when you make that connection, you can see them and be in the same space with them. You become that lifelong fan, and you're like, oh my gosh, we are connected. And it's so true and so real with every human interaction. There's one thing to text your friends, another thing to sit in the same room with them and have a conversation with them. So you're nailing it on so many levels, so many levels.
Well, I just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I guess I'll just wrap up with this, if possible. We talk about how so many people are defining success in a lot of different ways. So many people try to quantify success and turn it into a number. How do you define success? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I spent the early part of my career, believe it or not, and most people probably do this, especially in sales, defining success by how much money you could make, right? Like what is my W-2 going to look like at the end of the year?
Right.
And a lot of that has gone away. I mean, you still want to put bread on the table for your family, and everyone needs to do that. But, ultimately right now, I think it really comes down to how much can I learn, which is totally the opposite of how I started. I was like, how little can I learn? How fast can I make money? Right. That was like what I was focused on when I was in college. It was like all about the job. And now I'm all about what can I learn? So, and that was why I came to Snapchat, right? Because it's like the evolution of what's happening in the world from a communication standpoint. And ultimately from a media standpoint, I was like, that's a train I need to learn about or get on so I can learn about all the changes, right? So that's going to help me diversify my skill set as I move forward throughout my career, right? And I'm at the precipice of just getting to the point where I'm getting into these like really senior positions. So if I want to become a leader and recognized as a trusted source in Detroit, then that's what I'm going to need to do, is be as knowledgeable as I possibly can.
Oh, so good, so good. Mike, I'll wrap it up with these thoughts. You used leader in the future tense, like when you get to be a leader. I'll just tell you, I don't know you very well. I mean, we've now interacted twice, but you've already had this huge influence on me. So you're leading me, and I appreciate that. I think that other people that listen to this are going to be nodding their heads, saying amen, preach, and just sharing this with so many others. And although you don't work in education per se, you, I think, have just educated people all across this country. And it's powerful. The message that you share, your story, your passion, your conviction it's amazing. So I appreciate that.
I had a last thought here, and it was, because I failed at this poker thing and I thought I was always failing when I was young, and it always seemed so dramatic, right? You get a test score back and it seems so dramatic. You got to go home to your parents. You got to talk about this, or you didn't make the team, and it was like the most dramatic thing, right? And like, I don't know what my next job's going to be. It was so dramatic. And now things seem less dramatic. Like, it's just, if you just stay the course, and that's a lot of like, those are just processes of learning.
Right.
And then the other thing I would say is the value of relationships. Like, I've always overvalued relationships and communication and people. Like, I just love people. And at one point that didn't seem like that was going to help me in a career standpoint. And then all of a sudden it did in a big, big way. And I've made a lot of really trust-based relationships in this community. And as such, they've helped me, and I've learned a lot from them. They've learned a lot from me, and we grow together.
So good. So good. I'll share a little bit my story. And some people have heard this already, and I've written about it and talked about it. But so I'm in my 20th year in education. After I had taught for 1 year, mind you, I thought I had all the answers. I thought, hey, I've got this thing down. I'm ready to go out there and lead. So I went out and got my master's. It took me a year to get my master's degree. So after my second year of teaching, I had my master's. I went on 16 job interviews to become a school leader, to become a principal, assistant principal. any kind of leadership position, 16, and did not get a single call back. And I was so angry and so pissed and thought, these people are all just a bunch of idiots. They don't know that they're missing the next best thing. I've got all the answers. And I shut down the world and said, they're just missing out because I know how great I am. And I had a mentor who called me in, sat me down, and told me just flat out I was missing the mark. And basically gave the same advice that you just gave. Basically, humble yourself and start focusing on people. Live in the moment. Live right now and quit trying to set yourself up for that next best thing, and doors will start opening for you. And that's exactly what happened. I went in and just tried to become the absolute best I could as a teacher. And then I was just given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity without having to knock down doors and knock down walls. And I think what you just said it resonated with me personally. And I think it's going to resonate with so many others as well.
Yeah, I think everybody probably spends too much time looking into the future and not analyzing the doors that are right in front of them.
Yeah.
You miss opportunities sometimes by looking beyond the ones that are right there.
True story.
Yeah.
Right. You begin every sentence with, I can't wait until, you miss right now. So that's good.
That's right.
It's good. Well, Mike, I just want to say thank you once again. I appreciate this so much. One of my favorite conversations I've had on this podcast. So you did live up to that expectation that I threw out there. So I appreciate it so much. And
well, I am more than flattered to have been considered to be a part of this.
So thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm just ending the recording.
Yep.